added to his growing list of recognitions this award. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the 2009 Defending the American Dream National Award recipient, Congressman James Sensenbrenner.
Our bust of the best president of the United States that will ever serve through any of our lifetimes. Today I've been asked to come and give you a report from the court of Queen Nancy, the land of hope and change. I don't know if you still got any hope, and the change that we're seeing is what's left in our pockets after all of this. But I want to kind of have an economic accounting of what's happened since the 111th Congress was sworn in on the 6th of January. We've been going on the most unbelievable spend-a-thon in the history of the human race. And I want to start adding up the tab. First, we passed liberalizing the extension of the state children's health insurance program, which isn't for kids anymore. And that was financed by an increase in the cigarette tax. I don't know where they're going to get the money when everybody quit smoking because the cigarette taxes were so high. That was about $61 billion. Then we passed the release of the second amount of $350 billion to pay off bank barons who ran their banks into the ground. This is called the Troubled Asset Relief Program, the TARP for short. Then came the Nancy Pelosi, David Obey stimulus package. That doesn't stimulate the economy, but it's just massive social spending on a liberal dream wish list that they haven't gotten fully funded for the last 40 years. $810 billion. Last week, the House of Representatives passed another Obey bill, the Omnibus Appropriation Bill of $410 billion with about 9,000 earmarks in it. Now, in addition to this, we have got the President's budget, where he's got a cap and tax global warming plan. And remember, it's cap and tax, not cap and trade, because what you're going to end up paying is the tax folded into your electric natural gas bill and the price of gas at the pump. $646 billion for Al Gore and his friends. The President's budget has talked about tax increases on the rich. He defines what rich is. That includes a tax on charitable contributions for the first time in history. Boy, that makes a lot of sense. And also limiting the deduction for state and local taxes, which hits those of us who live in Wisconsin right between the eyes. And we're told that there's another GM bailout coming down the pipe later this month. And also our Treasury Secretary, who ought to spend more time figuring out how to file his taxes correctly, is talking about a second TARP to bail out the failed bank executive, but he hasn't told us how much it will cost. And the estimate that I've heard is between $1 trillion and $2 trillion. Now, I know that all of your Japanese calculators that you've been ringing up the tab of what I've been talking about the last few minutes don't have enough zeros on them to be able to figure out what this is all about. But we're talking in the neighborhood of between $4 trillion and $5 trillion worth of spending. Now, this was from the candidate who criticized Bush for spending too much money, and Bush did spend too much money, but you are just seeing the deficit and the national debt go through the roof. Now, what happens when that takes place? In the past, we have been able to finance our deficit overspending by borrowing money from largely the Chinese and OPEC. The Chinese economy is in the tank because nobody's got the money around the world to buy the cheap goods they produce there. And OPEC had a lot of money when the price of oil was $150 a barrel, but they don't have it anymore now that the price of oil is down to about $40 a barrel. So if you can't finance this through borrowing and charging our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, what Mr. Geithner will do is to run the printing press. And you and I are going to be seeing inflation that will be out of control, I think, as early as the middle to the end of next year. Now, on the other side of the column, let's look at what the Dow Jones Industrial Average is. The day after the election, the Dow was at 9,100. Every time somebody from the Obama administration, whether it's the President or Secretary Geithner or his healthcare gurus or what have you, open their mouths, the Dow drops about 5%. And it's gone from 9,100 to 6,500 in the course of a few months. He can't blame that on George Bush. He can't blame that on the Republicans in the Congress. He has nobody to blame but himself. And what we're seeing here is overspending that is going to bring about inflation that I think will make the Jimmy Carter inflation at the end of the 70s look pale in comparison. And inflation wipes out savings, it wipes out retirement income, it wipes out income that people have set aside to pay for the college education of their kids. And it in effect is a sales tax that no politician has to vote for. That is what makes it sinful. And we have to rise up and we have to tell people like David Obey to quit putting a $2.5 billion earmark for the national parks that his son lobbies for and the stimulus bill and saying it's not my fault. Come on now. He signed it up. And I can tell you that if Paul Ryan or Jim Sensenbrenner did that for one of our kids, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which is against the death penalty, would have a scaffold up the street of 4th and State, so there would be a public execution of us for conflict of interest. Regardless of who does it, and it's up to the media to expose that. Thank God for people like this in the Senate. We're seeing the character assassination squad led by Rahm Emanuel trying to marginalize people who are giving an opposite viewpoint, who are telling the truth. They're not going to pass the fairness doctrine because that has been so tarred. But what they're going to do is take away our First Amendment rights and their First Amendment rights bit by bit by bit, so that we will be to 1984. Backwards a bit, but still George Orwell's book, where thinking and speaking is done by the government. We saw and seen what a failure that is in Nazi Germany and in Soviet Russia. We still not done it too. And then there's a whole long list of things that Congress shall pass no law. Let's live up to the Constitution. That document made our country great. The free enterprise system made our country great. And all of you are here because you believe in the Constitution, the rights it guarantees, and the free enterprise system that has been fostered by it. The fight has just begun. And while we're going to lose votes in the Congress because elections do have consequences, we have to expose who votes which way and make the people who are voting their own. November 2nd, 2010 is when Americans take back